Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Prime Minister Modi receives UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan as he lands in India for a brief visit. EU looks to avert Trump's Greenland tariffs, prepares retaliation. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer calls for calm discussion, warns against using tariffs as a weapon against allies. Japan's Prime Minister Takaichi announces snap elections for February 8th, hoping for a stronger mandate. And IMF raises economic growth forecast for India in 2026 to 7.3%, citing strong momentum. UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan was received by Prime Minister Narendra Modi as the dignitary arrived in India on an official brief visit. Al Nahyan is visiting India at the invitation of Prime Minister Modi. Taking to social media site X, Prime Minister Modi said that Al Nahyan's visit illustrates the importance he attaches to a strong India-UAE friendship. This marks Al Nahyan's third official visit to India since assuming office as President of the UAE and his fifth visit to the country over the past decade. India and the UAE share multi-dimensional ties anchored in strong political engagement, deep cultural connections and a rapidly expanding economic partnership. European leaders continue to weigh their response to US President Donald Trump's tariff threats over Greenland. The EU leaders will convene an extraordinary summit in Brussels on Thursday to discuss the bloc's response to the United States. The leaders have already decided to defend against any form of coercion while continuing to engage constructively with the US. Meanwhile, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and other members said on Sunday that the EU and Britain stand firm in their commitment to uphold the sovereignty of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark.
This is not how allies should treat each other. And in that sense, I understand the word blackmail. Yes, absolutely. We have until February 1st to really present a united front to make it clear that we do not find this acceptable. And we also have stated that as far as we are concerned, the territorial integrity and self-determination of Greenland and Denmark are not up for discussion. But we also believe that the use of trade tariffs in this way is inappropriate and moreover unnecessary. So that will be our message.
Tanden laten zien. Zeker.
Spoken to the Prime Minister of Greenland, and there's a full commitment, not surprisingly, as is appropriate, of NATO partners to the security of Greenland. That's the right way to address this security, and the right way, finish and then hand back in terms of whether it's development of critical minerals, is to develop in partnership.
German Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil also said on Monday that there would be a strong response to additional US tariffs, adding that the European Union needed robust instruments to counter unfair trade practices.
Germany and France are in agreement. We will not allow ourselves to be blackmailed. Europe will give a united, clear response, and we are now preparing united countermeasures with our European partners. We are preparing them in case President Trump maintains his tariff threats.
Now, over the weekend, US President Donald Trump has reiterated his demands for Denmark to sell Greenland, and the battle over the world's largest island is now also having an economic impact in the region. Lars Wolter is with Deutsche Welle and joins me from Berlin on the story. Lars, thank you for being with us. What can you tell us about what's going on?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, what a wild weekend it was. On Friday, Germany and some other European countries sent a handful of troops to Greenland. It was not in an effort to engage in any takeover games. It was, in fact, in an effort to show US President Trump that Europe would be willing to take Greenland and its strategic position more seriously in future to show that Europe can handle whatever Trump thinks might be a threat to Greenland. However, Trump saw the arrival of these troops as a European aggression, as a sign, and now that part is certainly true, that Europe would support Denmark in keeping Greenland instead of having to sell it to the US. And Trump reacted immediately by levying new tariffs on Germany, France, Britain, and a few other nations. 10% for now, 25% starting in June, and until, quote, a deal is done for the US to acquire Greenland.
Lars, also tell us, for the benefit of our viewers, why is Trump so interested in Greenland?
Two reasons for that. One is the strategically important location of the world's largest island. It's situated in the Arctic between the US and Russia, and that is why the US has always had a military presence there. Anyway, from Greenland, the US was able to have eyes on Russia and detect, for example, rocket launches. Now, with that location in mind, Trump says if the US doesn't take over Greenland, then Russia or China will. However, nothing points to those countries having any such plans. The second reason why Trump is likely interested in Greenland is simply resources. There are many resources in the ground there, including rare earth elements, and those in particular the US needs urgently as China, with its quasi-monopoly, is limiting their exports.
Okay, thank you very much, Lars Walter there from DW Berlin. Let's move on now. The Syrian government and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces agreed on an immediate and comprehensive ceasefire on all fronts on Sunday. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara on Sunday announced the truce with the chief of the Kurdish-led forces, taking almost full control of the country and dismantling the Kurdish-led forces that control the northeast for over a decade. Speaking in Damascus, Syrian President al-Shara said the deal would allow Syrian state institutions to reassert control over 3 eastern and northern governorates. These are Al-Hasaka, Dar-e-Zor and Raqqa. Under the agreement signed by al-Shara and Abdi, Syrian authorities will take over civilian institutions, border crossings and oil and gas fields that have underpinned Kurdish self-rule. The agreement will also see the Kurdish administration and forces integrate into the state after months of stalled negotiations on the issue. Syrian Kurdish leader Mazloum Abdi, in a televised address, said that he agreed to the deal to avoid a broader conflict. Abdi said he is set to meet Shara in Damascus on Monday. Back to Asia. Japan's Prime Minister Takaichi on Monday announced snap general election for February the 8th. Takaichi said the lower house will be dissolved on January 23rd, with campaigning beginning from January 27th. The Prime Minister said the election is aimed at securing a mandate for higher government spending, tax cuts and a new national security strategy. As part of her economic pitch, Takaichi promised a 2-year suspension of the 8% consumption tax on food, a move designed to ease household pressures, boost spending and generate employment. However, government estimates suggest the tax cut could reduce annual revenue by around $32 billion. The announcement rattled financial markets, pushing yields on Japan's 10-year government bonds to a 27-year high earlier in the day. And in some sad news, a collision between 2 high-speed trains carrying hundreds of passengers in southern Spain killed at least 39 people and injured over 152 people. In a post on X, the Spain Transport Minister Oscar Puente said the impact has been terrible, causing the first 2 carriages of the Renfe train to be thrown off as a result. While Spain's Adif rail body said train between Malaga and Madrid went off the rails near Cordoba and slammed into a train coming from Madrid to Huelva. Adif has also suspended all rail services between Madrid and Andalusia. According to officials, rescue operations are ongoing and injured passengers have been taken to 6 different hospitals, calling it a night of deep pain. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez expressed deep sorrow and offered sincerest condolences over the accident. In a post on X, Pedro Sanchez wrote, and I quote him here, "Today is a night of deep pain for our country owing to the tragic rail accident in Adamuz. I want to express my sincerest condolences to the families and loved ones of the victims. No word can alleviate such great suffering, but I want them to know that the whole country is by their side in this tough moment." Unquote. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar expressed deep sorrow over a tragic train accident in Adamuz near Cordoba, Spain. On Sunday, in a post on X, he said, and I quote him again, "Saddened to learn about the tragic train accident yesterday in Adamuz near Cordoba city, Spain. Deepest condolences to the families who lost their loved ones. Wishes for the swift recovery of those injured." The World Economic Forum Annual Meeting 2026 is set to begin in Davos on Monday. The 5-day summit will run until January 23rd. The event is being held under the theme "A Spirit of Dialogue with a Focus on Cooperation in a Contested World, Innovation-Led Growth and Inclusive Development." The Swiss federal government, together with the WEF Foundation and its other partners, will contribute to the costs of WEF annual meeting security measures for the period 2025 to 2027 as part of a 3-tier finance model. The attendees include around 200 to 300 internationally protected persons, such as heads of state and government, ministers, high-level representatives of international organizations. Security is like never before in this edition. More than 5,000 armed forces personnel, snipers, AI-powered drones and special tools to counter spywares and espionage have been placed in the Swiss alpine town. More than 500 journalists are also covering the event at Davos. Demonstrations are also part of this summit. This time, the Swiss government is willing to authorize demonstrations, but it is essential that requirements to protect people, infrastructure and property are respected. So in order to hold a demonstration, detailed arrangements need to be made between the organizers and authorities. India is set to mount one of its strongest representations at this year's World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos, as union ministers, state chief ministers and more than 100 corporate leaders are attending the meet. Union ministers Prahlad Joshi, K. Ram Mohan Naidu and Maharashtra's Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis have already arrived at the Zurich town in Switzerland. In a post on X, Devendra Fadnavis said that he was deeply touched by the enthusiastic welcome and affectionate traditional greeting upon arriving at Zurich. Updates now on anti-ICE protests in the United States. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents continued their raids in St. Paul area of Minnesota. Increasingly tense confrontations between residents and federal officers have erupted in Minneapolis since Rennie Good was fatally shot by an ICE officer on January 7th. In another incident, protesters, including postal workers, rallied outside a Minneapolis post office, calling on U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to stop using postal property for its operations. The protest followed rising tensions after Trump warned to invoke the Insurrection Act, accusing state leaders of failing to rein in attacks on immigration officers. While the Pentagon has ordered about 1,500 active duty soldiers in Alaska to prepare for a possible deployment to Minnesota, the Insurrection Act enables use of the military to suppress armed rebellion or domestic violence. You're watching DD India Live, still to come on this show. Poland should display zero tolerance for terrorism, says External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, as he hosts his counterpart Radoslaw Sikorski in New Delhi. Kremlin says Russian President Putin invited to join President Trump's board of peace in Gaza. And India achieves record electronics exports at $47 billion in 2025, informs IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I am Tanvi Thaneja. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, raised its growth forecast for India in fiscal 2026 by 0.7 percentage points to 7.3%, citing strong momentum. The upgrade follows a revision earlier this month by India's National Statistics Office, which raised its estimate for growth to 7.4% in the year ending March 31st, above the government's initial projection of 6.3% to 6.8%. In its World Economic Outlook report released on Monday, the IMF said that the upward revision for fiscal 2026 reflected better than expected outturn in the third quarter of the year and strong momentum in the fourth quarter. The IMF had previously estimated growth for fiscal 2026 at 6.6% in Article 4 staff report. The IMF further added that global growth is expected to remain steady, with momentum in high-tech sectors set to slow down but still partly offsetting the weakness in other sectors. India's Information Technology Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, in a social media post on X, highlighted the rapid strides made by India in the domain of electronics with regard to exports. The post further read, Bharat achieves a record electronics exports of $47 billion in 2025. More importantly, of the total, about $30 billion of exports were from PLI-driven smartphone exports. The minister also noted that India's electronics exports have grown 11 times since 2014-15. Electronics is now India's third largest export item, providing 25 lakh, that is 2.5 million new jobs with strong women participation, opportunities for MSMEs, that's micro, small and medium enterprises, and long-term skilling of the youth. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal met US Senator Steve Daines and the US Ambassador to India, Sergio Gore. And in news just in, the UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan is in New Delhi on the invitation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcomed Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the UAE, and his family at his residence at Lok Kalyan Marg. Prime Minister Modi presented these traditional Indian gifts to the visiting dignitary. Prime Minister Modi gifted the President of the UAE a royal carved wooden jhula swing, a beautifully carved wooden swing from Gujarat that sits at the heart of many Gujarat family homes. It is hand-carved with detailed floral and traditional designs showing skilled craftsmanship of Gujarat. In Gujarati culture, the jhula, the swing, symbolizes togetherness, conversation and bonding across generations. The gift also resonates deeply with the UAE's declaration of 2026 as the Year of Family. Prime Minister Modi also gifted UAE President a Pashmina shawl in an ornate silver box. The Pashmina shawl comes from Kashmir and is made by hand from very fine wool, making it soft, light and warm. The shawl is placed in a decorative silver box made in Telangana. Together, They represent India's rich tradition of handloom and handicraft. The Pashmina shawl in an ornate silver box was also gifted to Her Highness Sheikh Fatima bin Mubarak Al Ketbi. She was also gifted Kashmiri saffron in an ornate silver box. Grown in the Kashmir Valley, saffron is revered for its deep crimson strands and intense aroma. So, Prime Minister Modi welcoming Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the UAE, on his third official visit to India, welcoming him and his family at his residence at Lok Kalyan Marg. Prime Minister Modi presenting these traditional Indian gifts to the family. These gifts, a traditional royal carved wooden jhula from Gujarat, Pashmina shawl and Kashmiri saffron, all deeply build on the partnership, the friendly ties shared between India and the UAE. Prime Minister Modi has also visited the UAE 7 times in the last decade. During his 2019 visit to the UAE, he was conferred the UAE's highest civilian honor, underlining the deepening strategic bond between the two countries. India and the UAE share centuries-old trade links, but ties entered a new era in 2015 when Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the UAE, the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister in 34 years. Since then, India-UAE relations have seen a transformational shift driven by strong political trust and a rapidly expanding economic partnership. Today, the UAE is India's third largest trading partner. Bilateral trade stood at a record $100 billion in 2025 fiscal year. The UAE is India's second largest export destination, while India is the UAE's second largest trading partner. India's UPI and RuPay card systems are operational in the UAE, facilitating seamless digital payments for millions. Now, non-resident Indians, that's NRIs in the UAE, can also access UPI without having an Indian mobile number. This milestone significantly improves the digital payment experience for the Indian expatriate community and tourists in the UAE. Investment is a key pillar of the partnership. The bilateral investment treaty came into force, in fact, in August 2024. And also, it's interesting to know that Indians form the largest expatriate community in the UAE. So, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan's third official visit to India reflects the depth and momentum of a relationship that has evolved into a comprehensive strategic partnership over the years. So, several topics of international and regional concern are expected in talks between the two leaders. All right. US President Donald Trump on Sunday invited Prime Minister Narendra Modi to be part of the Board of Peace that will work towards bringing lasting peace in Gaza. US Ambassador to India Sergey Gore shared on social media US President Trump's invitation letter to Prime Minister Modi. In the letter, Trump said, "It is my great honor to invite the Prime Minister of the Republic of India to join him in a critically historic and magnificent effort to solidify peace in the Middle East and at the same time to embark on a bold new approach to resolving global conflict." Trump, in his letter, referred to his September 29th announcement of a comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict, as well as his 20-point roadmap to bring peace to the region. The invitation comes as the US administration moves forward with formalizing the Board of Peace structure linked to Trump's broader Gaza roadmap. Meanwhile, Polish Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski met External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar in New Delhi on Monday. The two leaders discussed India-Poland strategic partnership. During his opening remarks, India's External Affairs Minister said that bilateral relations have progressed over the past few years and said that the two leaders would review the Action Plan 2024 to 2028 and seek to realize the full potential of strategic ties between India and Poland.
Today, Deputy Prime Minister, we would review the Action Plan 2024-28, through which we seek to realize the full potential of our strategic partnership. We will also discuss ways to take forward our cooperation in trade and investment, defense and security, clean technologies, and digital innovation. Poland is one of India's largest trading partners in Central Europe. Our bilateral trade, I believe, stands at about $7 billion, having registered a growth of almost 200% in the past decade. Indian investment in Poland has surpassed $3 billion, creating a number of job opportunities for Poles. India's strong economic growth, size of its market, and pro-investment policies provide immense opportunity for Polish businesses. In recent past, both in New York last September and in Paris this January, I have candidly shared our views on the Ukraine conflict and its implications. While doing so, I have also repeatedly underlined that the selective targeting of India is both unfair and unjustified. I do so again today. Poland should display zero tolerance for terrorism and not help fuel the terrorist infrastructure in our neighborhood.
Polish Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister Radosław Sikorski reiterated Poland's support in India's fight against cross-border terrorism.
Personally, I have been to India many times before, both privately and officially, but for the first time since the establishment by our prime ministers of the strategic partnership. And as you said, we want to review the progress and the perspectives. We seem to be the dynamic countries in our regions, and therefore we should explore the opportunities that there are. We are also countries that were colonized in the 19th century, so we have particular sensitivities in that area. I completely agree with you on the need to counter trans-border terrorism. Poland, as you may have heard, has been a victim of both arsons and attempted state terrorism. I also completely agree with you on the unfairness of selective targeting by tariffs, and we in Europe know something about that also, and we fear that this is progressing to a global trade turbulence. We are hoping that India will continue to stay engaged in Europe. We've noticed that you are establishing embassies everywhere in Europe, which means that you are serious about relations with the European Union.
Global trade turbulence defining relationships across the world. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live. And for those on the go, you can also download our DD India mobile app for news and updates at your fingertips. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.